Welcome to week 4 of our Stewardship Bible study. Last week we talked a bit about talents, and I would love to hear if you tried any new practices or had any new thoughts on the way that you use that have been given to you by God. If you have, send us a note in the forum. This week, we are going to take a turn and maybe talk about the tougher of the stewardship topics. We've talked about time and talents so far, and both of those have definite struggles associated with them, especially when we don't feel as though we have time in our lives or we don't see the talents that we possess. But this week we're going to talk about our treasures, and that is always a tough topic to look at, not only our material wealth, although that is certainly part of it, but to also look at our possessions. All that we have, all that surrounds us in our homes and in our lives. And it can often be difficult for us to hear that we need to give of those things, especially since we have spent so much time storing them up. And I think especially the texts that have to do with this type of stewardship are often hard because they tell us that we need to give it away or that we need to not store it up. And yet society tells us something very different. Society tells us that we need to save money in savings accounts and spend money that we don't even have on cars and houses and boats and snowmobiles and all kinds of things. And maybe more importantly, society also tells us that we need to save up for retirement. You know, the things we have, we should pay off our house and we should have nice things so that when it comes time to stop working, we're taken care of. We're not a burden on our family and on our friends. And in many ways, this is really important. And so these texts that talk about money are often really difficult for us to hear. Or even texts that talk about our possessions are really difficult for us to hear because we're trying to store them up for a reason. And yet, God has a slightly different take. So this week's text is from Matthew, 6th chapter, verses 19 to 24. It says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." These are really hard words from Jesus today, and I think we get caught up on them. And so I want to know, what did you hear in these words? What caught your attention? Was it hard to hear? Was it easy to hear? Did it make you think in a different way? For me, this type of stewardship is the hardest to wrap my head around. Being in my mid-20s and having lots of loans and starting out with a household and a new family, it's really hard to hear this sometimes. Because I want to store up nice things for my family. I want to store up a nice place to live that's warm and comfortable. And I don't necessarily want to hear that I need to give it away or use it in a different way. But I think that's why I like this text so much, is that it's not a text that is saying you have to give everything away. Instead, it's a text saying, what are you doing with what you have? Is it the main focus of your life? Are you more focused on storing up wealth and treasures than you are on storing up treasures in heaven? Are you more focused on storing up the possessions that you have than you are on God? I think that's the question for us today, and I think that's where it meets with stewardship, is how are you using what God has given you? How are you using your possessions and your money and entering into the world and using that for your neighbor, for your family, and even at times for yourself? It is okay to use those things for ourselves. But it also is important that that's not our only focus. So I think these verses are calling us to refocus, to not just look at ourselves, but instead to also look at the other. Look at the world. Look at where God is calling you to use what you have. And maybe for you that means giving something away. Maybe it means inviting people into your home and allowing them to use what you already have. I've always been amazed at those people who have invited family members or even strangers, students who are studying abroad, to come in and live in their house for an extended period of time, for a whole summer or a whole semester or a whole year. And just given of what they have, they let them use their computers and their TVs, their beds. That is a way of stewardship, inviting in those who need it. And so sometimes it's something as simple as that. But maybe God is calling you to actually give something away. Give away a large chunk of wealth, or give away your gaming system, or whatever it is. It's different for all of us. That's my challenge for us all this week, is to really take a hard look at what we have. Look around you. Look around your house. Look at your bank account and really take stock of all that God has blessed you with. Often we don't feel as though we have a lot of wealth. We don't feel as though we have a lot of possessions. But I guarantee you that any time you've ever moved, you realize that you have way more possessions than you ever thought you did. Or at least that's been my experience. And often that means that I take many trips to Goodwill or Salvation Army because I realize that I don't need it all. And so take a look around, see what it is that God has blessed you with. And start to ask that question of how God is calling you to use all that He's given you out in the world. And the answer is going to be different for all of us. So if you have any thoughts on that, please share. I look forward to hearing if you have come up with anything, if anything has kind of struck you and made you think about this differently. So that's the challenge for the week, and I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next week.